the Honorable Judge Joe Brown. I put your links in there for your barbecue sauce and your link for your mayoral campaign. So make sure everyone check those links out, purchase your barbecue sauce, and if you can, support his run for the mayor of Memphis, Tennessee.
JJB 2023 for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Take your town back, send Brown downtown to do so. It is the way to go.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better. So tonight's two topics, I'll put up a couple of quick slides. And the first one is Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the owner or founder of FTX and also Alameda, and that deals with cryptocurrency. Let me know if you're able to see that. I sent you the link.
No, I went and looked into it a bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Yes, his 5-bedroom condo in the Bahamas, sharing with, I think it's 4 or 5 other couples. So interesting.
Yes.
So the Bahamian government arrested him. That rouses some suspicions, and also the timing of the arrest was interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it on that day, the day before he was supposed to testify in front of a House committee, to keep him from exposing some things. They kind of do that down in the Bahamas. Do the things he seems to have been involved in. It's interesting, and one thing I would point out to people when they start getting into cryptocurrency.
Yes, sir.
Same problem that got faced when Goldman Sachs and Smith Barney were going belly up. Everything was in cyberspace, and there was no hard currency in any bank, and the U.S. had to bail them out with $700 billion under the Bush administration and $781 billion under the Obama administration to keep everything from going dead fish belly up.
You said 780 billion?
$781 billion under the Obama administration and $700 billion under the Bush administration. You know, they coined that thing too big to fail, because they had been allowed to get away with entirely too much. See, the problem with Bitcoin is it's something that can be traded, and it has value in and of itself because it can be traded. But what happens if the net goes down? What do you prove you have these assets? Mm-hmm. Do you have anything on paper that you can tote around and show day after tomorrow, or are you just out of luck?
Now, that's what I wanted to ask you as far as jurisdiction. So, he was arrested at his home, reportedly.
The Bahamas.
At the Bahamas. Then he was arraigned at Nassau. He, according to the reports, waived extradition. However, the magistrate at the Bahamas didn't grant bail. So, that's where I'm a little bit fuzzy. What can happen?
Well, see, the prime minister is Philip Davis. And they have this little thing they were doing or have been doing in the Bahamas where their banking system is being used at some gain to certain select people in the Bahamas to shield certain very rich people from what's been going on in their homelands. Like the U.S. has a thing where they're trying to get down into the Bahamas and get their attorney general's office to help them get people who have been doing things with trust funds and such like that don't match American. It's taking up a lot of their time to go deal with these things. The Bahamians can't make deposits in these accounts, but foreigners can, and some select few Bahamians get an interest in this. So it's not very safe. I wouldn't be surprised that the Bahamian government didn't get instructions to do this, so he could not be made available.
You're a little bit choppy. Let me check the
But
router.
anyway, Bankman-Fried is interesting. His mother was a professor at Stanford Law School, and so was his father. He was smart, went through either MIT or Caltech. Indicates he got a lot of brain power.
Yes.
He was into physics and math, which is good. And I say, we have this thing, the company, FTX.
Yes, sir.
It is an interesting type of company. FTX deals with what they call arbitrage. That is, going between two stock exchanges or markets and buying heavily in the one that has a higher value than another. And the effect is, over long terms, they artificially stabilize the value of certain entities by the way they do it. So FTX got started in 2018.
Yes.
And it looked like it was promising. And then there was an accusation of money laundering and fraud and a few other things, and $4 billion went from FTX to Alameda Research.
Yes.
There's another $6+ billion of investors' monies that got transferred to an affiliated corporate entity that was run by Bankman-Fried's romantic girlfriend. And there are questions about that. So we've got a real live mess.
Yes. You are in the dark. I'm not sure if you can see that on
Well, what's happening is you've got fighting for the future of Memphis, and that seems to have... Okay, now, you transferred me to this rather than to...
I can hear you.
Let me get back to...
Okay.
Let me get back. Now, can you see me?
There you are. You're back.
What you had was my website up, so...
It must be on delay. But back to it.
Yes.
Yes, because...
Okay.
Yes, but this is really interesting because apparently he has contributed to many federal campaigns. So could that be an issue down the road?
Well, it's a way that big corporate entities and large operations protect themselves. They curry favor with the people that we have elected to be in charge of governance, and they get insulated. Every now and then something happens outside of that. I imagine that the involvement of the Bahamian government was a way for certain individuals and entities in the United States to insulate themselves from the consequences. Now, what you have is, let me see if I can break this down, what we're dealing with.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, an exchange traded fund is essentially what FTX is about. And their principal asset is a form or value supposedly backed by currency. ETF is a type of investment fund and or exchange that is similar to mutual funds. These things get exchanged and traded on stock exchanges, but they're not quite, because what happens is the assets are bought and sold from other entities and other investors. They're sold and traded throughout the day on various stock exchanges. Now, the value that they get assigned is what they ramped up to at the end of the day by exercising what they're calling arbitrage. And what is that? That's that they hold assets such as stocks, bonds, future contracts, future commodity interest, gold, currencies, Bitcoin here. And the arbitrage method is sort of a guarantee that the way it's done, there will be some kind of profit shown. That's because they flip-flop between various markets. Like, for example, if an Asian stock exchange shows this particular FTX is, say, being higher there, they'll get into that, and that'll bring what's happening in the United States up. And then they'll quickly go back to the U.S. and the value is established by what the level is at the end of the day. Now, they take advantages of these differences in prices between two or more markets by striking combinations of matching deals to capitalize on the differences, and profit is made in terms of the difference between the market prices at the end of the day and what it has been marketing for earlier in the day. Now, that is also a good way to disguise what's going on, because it depends upon electronic devices and algorithms, so that transactions, buy, sell, trade, can happen instantaneously. In other words, you press the execute button on the computer, or it does it itself because it's programmed based on certain fluctuations it is aware of in the market. And so much of this is bought at the exact same time, so much of that is sold at the exact same time as so much of this is traded. So it's very difficult to keep track of it. And it's an ideal way, effectively, to launder money or get away with some things that aren't too savory. Now, it's based on a risk-free profit after all transactions cost. An arbitrage opportunity occurs when this instantaneous buy, sell, trade thing is available and is exercised. Now, we have all sorts of things where values are driven up and down artificially by what they call relative value or convergent trades, or in merger arbitrage, where people put stuff together, take them apart. They say, all right, this over here, whether or not it is reliable, is saying this is the value, so that's what we need to be bought, sold, and traded for. People looked at Bitcoin as a way to get into something, so they put cash assets in it. That's where the problem goes. What happened to these cash assets?
Let me ask.
Ordinarily, when we start doing with arbitrage, we're talking about bonds, stocks, derivatives, and things like that, commodities and currencies, again, back to Bitcoin. Now, this has the effect of causing prices in different markets to come together or converge or become the same. So it's fairly easy to manipulate a market if you have access to the necessary electronic and computational devices. That is a problem. So ETFs normally generate something like 0.1% interest or gain on something or income on something. Certain special types can ramp up to a 1% interest gain when you have the transactions going on. Now, an ETF divides ownership of the entity into shares, and there are share or stockholders.
Yes.
Now, people bought into Bitcoms, and to an extent, a Bitcom coin is effectively a share of this enterprise. It's not really currency. People have to understand that. It's a representation of an interest that has a market value. In terms of you being able to take that thing that has a market value on paper, which is not really on paper, it's in cyberspace, and going out and spending it is not the same as pulling a dollar bill out of your pocket that says United States currency, valid on all transactions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that has a trade value around the world that is fixed, and you can port it in your hand, or you can write a check for it and somebody can get instantaneous cash for it, or you can go to an ATM somewhere or wire funds with the credit card or acquire merchandise or goods or services for that card because the card is backed by some powerful entity's currency.
So, when it comes to hedge funds, is it up to the investors to, if you're going to be a prudent person, if you're investing, check to see where everything is going, or are you going to leave it up to what you're investing in to let you know where and how your money looks? You remember the whole Bernie Madoff scandal? Is this almost?
Yeah, I know, but you see, one of the bigger operatives in this whole market, one of the bigger operatives in this market is Charles Schwab. You see him advertised on TV all the time, and people put money up with them and trust them to invest the money wisely in one form or another. That does not mean people can actively check day in, day out, minute by minute, hour by hour with what's going on. First off, they don't have access to the floor. Second off, they aren't tied in immediately to the in and outs of the reporting of the various stock exchanges. They can't predict what's going on, but mathematically, when you get into converting what's going on into probabilities possible, you can make effectively mathematical predictions that are pretty accurate and pretty much guarantee returns. That's what Bitcoin has been availing itself of. But what's happened with this is a lot of the money that got put up by investors, according to allegations, is being put here and there in places it should not be. For example, the allegation that Bankman-Fried's corporation that had several $1 billion in investors' cash on hand turned that over to his girlfriend's corporation, which was a subsidiary of FTX. Whereas where the problem goes in, because it becomes a house of cards, and if anything slips out from under it, it all goes to hell.
Yes.
So the $1 trillion potential net worth of the system is dropped down to zero at the moment. So what happens with the investors?
That's the question.
Now, as of August last year, somewhere around $9 trillion was invested globally in ETFs. Now, that included just of that 9 trillion, 6.6 trillion invested in ETFs in the United States alone. So that's a lot of cash. Now, this is a list you should be aware of. In the United States, the largest ETF issuers are BlackRock iShares with a 35% approximate market share, the Vanguard Group with a 28% market share, the State Street Global Advisors with a 14% market share, Invesco with a 5% market share, and Charles Schwab Corporation with a 4% market share. Now, be aware of what's going on. Exchange-traded notes and closed-end funds, a lot of people confuse with ETFs, but they're not quite the same. In exchange-traded funds, ETFs are debt instruments that are not exchange-traded funds. The notes are not the same as the funds. The notes represent funds, but they're not the same as actually trading funds. And the thing is going from market to market to continually raise the value of the funds. Now, that's a house of cards waiting to collapse, but it's not illegal per se. You run a risk. Now, January 2018, Bankman-Fried organized an arbitrage trade, moving up to $25 million a day to take advantage of the higher price of Bitcoin in Japan compared to America. Now, Bankman-Fried went to China, where he participated into some work shops in Macau, and he wound up moving to Hong Kong in 2018. Now, in 2019, the following year, he founded FTX, which is a cryptocurrency derivative exchange. And all of this started going on. And then things got a little flaky when, I think it was in December last year, 8th and 9th, somewhere thereabouts, he and some other executives of this industry testified before the Congressional Committee on Finance. I think it was Financial Services. That caused some problems to some people. Now, this year in May, it came out that Emergent Fidelity Technologies Limited, which is majority owned by Bankman-Fried, another corporation, bought 7.6% of so-called Robinhood Stocks, Inc. Now, September this year, it was reported that this group had offered to help fund Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter. Now, there was a lawsuit going on between Twitter and Musk, and it developed that Twitter revealed that an investment banker named Michael Grimes wrote that Bankman-Fried would be willing to commit up to $5 billion of Bankman-Fried-backed funds to invest in this so-called transaction. It didn't actually get used, but Bankman-Fried had invested more than $500 million in venture capital funds. In addition to this, including $200 million in Sequoia Capital.
Yes.
Now, Sequoia Capital helped out FTX's business by publishing this great review of how fine Bankman-Fried was. Now, once this insolvency matter hit the fan, they removed that posting. Now, November this year, Binance, which is run by the Chinese, remember he's over in Hong Kong to an extent, Changpeng Zhao revealed that his firm intended to sell its holdings of FTT, which was one of FTX's token holdings. And Binance received $529 million worth of FTT as part of its sale of its equity in FTX when they sold it in 2021. Zhao published on Twitter soon after this a report from so-called CoinDesk advising that the bulk of the holdings of Alameda, Bankman-Fried's trading firm, were in FTT. Now, that got discussed back and forth in the industry. And then Zhao announced a pending sale and dispute with Bankman-Fried, and the price of FTT and other cryptocurrencies started to decline. And then there was an overt criticism of FTX's lobbying activities and a few other questionable things. And then Binance announced that it had entered into a non-binding agreement to purchase FTX due to a liquidity crisis at FTX. In other words, they didn't have the money to cover all of their liabilities.
I'm going to show you this real quick.
And Zhao stated that Binance would engage in what they called a due diligence effort to ascertain the true value of the proposed investments for its so-called investors and others who might be interested in becoming part of the transaction, but that just did not come. And then there was an announcement that all crypto exchanges should avoid taking crypto tokens as collateral. This went downhill from that, and through November into December, it developed that FTX was going broke.
Yes.
Now, there was a thing on Reuters where it was revealed that, or claimed that Bankman-Fried had transferred at least $4 billion from FTX to Alameda Investments without disclosure to any of the people internally or to the public at any time this year. Now, this money transfer included customer funds, and it was backed by FTT and shares in Robinhood. This was not good, and it was cited in Wall Street Journal, that the chief executive was Alameda Research, was one Carolyn Ellison, allegedly, who seems to be the romantic girlfriend of Bankman-Fried. So we've got a real live mess going on here. We had Ellen DeGeneres, band leader, killed himself, and there is some assertion that had something to do with this situation, and we have other people implicated top to bottom in the social and political and economic hierarchy with being involved in this. So it's a real live mess, and I know lots of people that were heavily into Bitcoin because it looked like a winner. But
absolutely,
there is this thing: if it looks too good to be true. And the other thing is if you don't have it in your hand when you're talking about currency, if you don't have it on deposit where you can spend it, be very leery of it. You see, there is this thing people talk about, we need to get into gold. Well, the problem with gold and why nobody in the world uses it anymore is this. there's a finite amount of gold in the world, and when people invest in terms of gold and they make a profit, where do you get the extra gold to pay the profit? So it runs into all kinds of tricks that people have to use to get around that. So if you outlaw gold and just use currency, the fact of the matter is if the issuing entity is powerful enough, you can use ice cream sticks as legitimate currency if you can keep them from being counterfeited. The United States currency is printed on paper that nobody else seems to be able to duplicate all that closely. In one sense, it may be more valuable or rarer than gold. So the United States has thermonuclear warheads on ICBMs, missile-launched ballistic missiles, cruise missiles capable of being launched from B-52s, B-1s, B-2s, and various and sundry Air Force aircraft, and carried by Navy weapon systems, and it's got nuclear submarines, M1 tanks, M2, M3 Bradleys, and all sorts of things that it can use to assert itself in the world. So that empowers the U.S. currency and makes it a medium of international exchange, even though the current Biden administration, based on some announcements this week, really kind of messed up when Saudi Arabia, China, India, Russia indicated that, hey, maybe we can go elsewhere. We don't need them. The U.S. to deal with the money, and Saudi Arabia thumbed its nose at the U.S. and said, hey, we told you to look out, and you wouldn't listen. So it's fluid and up in the air, and that's on top of national and international inflation that's being generated massively. And we're trying to, in this country, meet it by the Feds raising interest rates significantly, and it hasn't really slowed it down much. So your buying power is evaporating, your ability to secure finance for expanding or opening businesses evaporating. It's a bad situation, and inflation is kicking in badly. So where are we going with this? We're in Ukraine, which generated the problem. Saudi Arabia had to say, don't go there. Don't put these sanctions on Russia. But the U.S. said, oh, we got to go fight for freedom. But are we fighting for anybody's freedom, or to keep Joe Biden and Hunter Biden from having the answer to some already published multi-count organized crime indictments that the Ukraine released more than 2 years ago? So is that why we're there? Or is it for a legitimate reason that serves the interests of the U.S. public? We had this thing with the lady basketball player that we traded for one of the most wanted criminals in the world.
Brittany Griner.
And she, yeah, and so what? Why did we do that? They've got countless numbers of Americans sitting in Russian prisons for drug offenses. They've got American veterans in POW camps captured in Ukraine. You've got CIA operatives, intelligence operatives, allied operatives, James Bond types that are sitting around looking at firing squads. And we've got this big time dealer, and we trade that dealer for a small time drug smuggler. What the hell's wrong with us? And then we've got people in American jails who would have gotten more time, who got more time for essentially the same type of offense than she got in Russia, which is interesting. 9 years versus what in Tennessee would be 12 to 18.
Wow.
For what she did. It wasn't just cannabis oil, one electronic cigarette. It was a quantity of what's known in the trade as hash oil, refined hashish, which is very potent stuff. So here we go. She gets paid 3 or 4 times more for playing basketball in Russia than she did playing for the WNBA.